Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Indonesia Unedited, where we engage in a series of open and honest conversations about Indonesia. So I'm Jane.
And I'm Indra.
And we're lecturers in Indonesian at the University of New England. Today I'm going to talk with Indra about the Indonesian music scene, specifically the underground music scene and its relationship with politics. An interesting fact about Indra is that not only is he an academic specialising in Indonesian politics, youth subculture and Islam, but he was also a member of the Indonesian underground music scene for over 20 years. Indra was the guitarist in the popular underground band Alone at Last, based in Bandung. So today it will be really interesting to hear both his personal and academic perspective on the relationship between music and politics in Indonesia. Indra, let's talk about you first. Tell us a bit about how you got involved in the underground music scene.
Before I became involved in the Indonesian underground music scene, I listened to punk music or punk rock when I was 13 or 14 years old. That was in 1994, 1995. At the time, I was a santri or a student in a religious Islamic boarding school in Pesantren Darul Arkom Muhammadiyah in Garut, West Java. From there, I listened to a variety of foreign punk bands like Green Day, Rancid, The Offsprings, NOFX, what else, Clover, and the Sex Pistols. I was very interested in the music, and it was quite different to the rock music that was popular also at the time, like Def Leppard, White Lion, Metallica, Sepultura, which they were great. I mean, they sounded great. So different to punk music or punk rock, the music is much more simple, easier to follow, especially when I didn't have any musical skills at all at the time. It's very easy to learn how to play punk music only with 3 to 4 guitar chords. You can make a song, basically, or play the Green Day songs, whatever. And most importantly for me, punk music or punk rock sounded more catchy. So from there, I got inspired by the bands that I was listening to and started my own band at the Pesantren. So I asked 2 of my friends to play drums and bass. Our band's called Sikring at the time, and then we changed it into Habernagen. And we started a regular rehearsal once a week in a cheap rental studio. We also started hunting for performance opportunities anywhere that was available, including in the formal 17 Agustusan or the Indonesian Independence Celebration. Basically, if you apply to perform there, you could, there's a big chance for you to perform, right? As an amateurist band, it's like a great opportunity, to show off what you got, basically.
Letting these little punks into their National Day celebrations.
That's right. Yes, that's right. And
straight out of the Pesantren.
That's right. Yeah, from there, I became more involved with the punk scene in 1996 when I moved to Bandung, to my hometown, because I moved my high school for some reasons. And I began to attending regularly underground music events that was held in this historic venue called Gor Saparua. It's like the Bandung's versions of CBGB, Indonesia's versions of CBGB. That's like a pub in New York, where the punk movement began. In Bandung, it's pretty much started from that venue. It's called Gor Saparua. And when I attended the music events, I didn't only listen to punk music or punk bands. There were also other underground bands introducing different types of underground genre, like hardcore punk, goth punk, greencore, ska punk, rap, and all that. And I was like, how come I did not know about this music, right? And when I attend the music events almost every week, I made new friends from the hangout places there in the music festivals. I made lots of new friends, and I got the chance to play in different bands with them, collaborating with them, and they taught me how to play music. They introduced me to different types of punk records, the music that rarely found in formal market. So I knew lots of new punk bands, metal bands from the underground network, basically, that was pretty much selling pirated versions of, punk CDs and cassettes. And from my involvement there, I've learned a lot. It given me a great experience of not only being an underground musician, but also as a person, which shaped or contributed to the shaping of my identities right now. I learned not only how to play music, but I also learned how to make or record your own music, and then also building your own record labels, creating alternative zines, and also what else? Designing band merchandises, selling stuff that you made by yourself. So it's really, really truly remarkable experience.
Yeah, those were some really formative years for you in your late teens, right? And you eventually formed a successful, popular band. How did you transition from...
You mean Alone at Last?
Yeah, Alone at Last. So how did you transition?
Well, my involvement in the scene started in 1996, but then Alone at Last was formed in 2002. So the project was not serious, but it ended up serious. It's actually an accumulation of my involvement in the scene after a few years. I've learned lots of different musical styles from different friends, different influences. We listen not only to punk, but also to other types of underground genres, and it became the music that we know as Alone at Last. I was actually resigning from my old band. It was a ska punk band called Young Coconut, Kelapa Muda. Because I was focusing on my study at the uni, because I studied in 2 different universities, and it was too hard for me to maintain my commitment in the scene and also my commitment in the study. So I decided to resign. But then my old drummer, asked me why don't we start the band again? And then, okay, why not? You
couldn't resist.
I couldn't resist. Let's play music again. And why not doing study, but also playing music at the same time? So I joined the invitation from my friend, and then we formed this band called Alone at Last. It was a mix of pop punk, melodic, but also what many people would say it's an emo kind of music. We didn't start it as a serious band, but ended up become serious. It's because that the music that we were performing was relatively different compared to other underground music at the time. It was punk, but it's like a variant of punk. So it's not too basic, simple punk music. We added a little bit of metal elements in there, a little bit of screaming and all that. That's why it's called emo, right? Emotional. So it sounded more emotional.
Crying?
In some songs, emo bands, the vocalists, they cry as well, but we rarely cry. More like a scream, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You didn't form this band on your own. You did it in collaboration with, right?
Yeah, that's right.
How did that work?
It was not too hard to form the band because they're pretty much people like me. We have a similar styles. We're easygoing, we like to hang out. We're not too serious people. We started the band, only 4 of us, a drummer, a bassist, 2 guitarists, and I used to be the lead vocal at the time, play guitar and also sing. But then after 2 or 3 years, I realized it's just too complicated. The more our music is complicated, it's just more difficult for me to sing at the same time. I'm such an amateurist, right? So we decided to add another member who will be the vocalist. Yeah, and he still sings as the frontman of the band until now still. We didn't start as a serious band, but it became serious. We got an offer for producing our own records from a major label as well. And it was tempting, but then there was a misunderstanding. So we decided not to go with the major label offer, and then we just made our own record labels. It's called Lonely End Records, and we produce our own album by ourselves. Consists of 6 songs. It's called Sendiri versus Dunia. At first, we only produced 500 cassettes, but then it ended up sold out for like 1,500 records. We were surprised because I thought our song was like pretty much shit, right? But then apparently many people like it, and we got lots of invitations from different musical events. So that's how Alone at Last became popular.
Kind of by chance, with a bit of novelty, and of course skill.
Skill? Well, we consider our skill as pretty much standard. Okay. Not that great, but I can tell you that what helped us really became well-known at the time. It's not only from the sellings of our albums, not only through our performances in underground music events, but also the fact that there's a third party selling our records without our knowledge.
Oh.
They pirated our albums, selling it in CD forms in black markets, where our albums is like next to a pop musicians' albums, basically next to each other. The cover was different, the title was all wrong. But they helped to promote, to sell our music. So people not only in urban centers that know about Alone at Last, but for people in the villages, in rural areas, they know about us. That's why we got invitations from small towns in Garut, in Tasikmalaya, in Cianjur, where we remember really well that we never sell our records there. So they must got it from the black market.
So you just let that slide?
Yeah. I still remember the pirated versions of our CD sold in black market. Was like, the cover was like made up. Someone made it up. Instead of like this cool destroyed, burning buildings, the cover was a couple of wedding rings. So yeah, it was so
surreal,
corny, but the music was successfully distributed. Yeah.
That kind of sounds like a world away. Now you're a lecturer and a family man, but could you say you're still a punk at heart? Are you still involved in any way in the music scene or in the punk ethos at least?
Yeah. Well, although my musical experiences started with punk rock, and how punk's principles or ethos have shaped my identities and values, I rarely consider myself as a punk. For me, the claim of being punk, the questions of authenticity as a punk, doesn't really matter to me. But in reality, how punk influenced my life is pretty much deeper. It contributed to who I am right now, who I was and who I am right now. And also it given me my academic work as well. It shaped my academic work as well. I did my master's thesis on punk rock as counter hegemony with Indonesia as a case study. And then I did my PhD thesis on the underground music scene and how it entangles with Islamic politics in contemporary Indonesia. Explaining how punk's predominant ideologies, which was left-leaning, shifted to neoliberalism and right-wing Islamism after the fall of Suharto in 1998. So they were all inspired by my involvement in the scene. And also the way I teach in my classrooms, I also applied punk's principles of egalitarianism, where I don't consider my students as subordinates or lower than me. In Indonesia, it's very much feudalistic, isn't it, in the classrooms, where students can't ask teachers or question teachers with difficult questions, or criticizing teachers is pretty much, an easy access for you to get kicked out from the classrooms, right? But I never done that because I consider my student as equal. And that's, I think, how my students appreciate the way I teach. Because I consider them as friends, basically. Of course, without limiting the professionalism in the teaching process.
You tried that style in the Indonesian university setting?
Yes,
wow.
That's right. Yeah. That's why many students like the way I do things at the university in classrooms. Some colleagues are not happy with it because they consider like, oh, you should be, creating this barrier with the students. But in the underground scene, in the punk scene, we learned that barriers have to be dismissed. Like if you go to underground or punk shows, you will see that the performers, the musicians or the bands, and the audiences, they are pretty much blending with each other. There's no barriers. Sometimes there's no stage, and if there's a stage, the height of the stage is like really shallow.
It's really symbolic, isn't it?
Really symbolic, and that the audience not only appreciating the artists or the musicians by clapping their hands or dancing, but they often jump onto the stage to sing together with the musicians, with the bands, and vice versa. The musicians often jump into the audiences, stage diving, and bring the microphone singing together with the audience. And that's pretty much the view that we often see in the punk shows or underground shows here in Australia as well, or elsewhere across the world. And that actually taught me how to dismiss that barriers in the teaching and learning process as well.
More broadly, let's talk about the relationship between underground music in Indonesia and politics. You've talked a bit about the ethos and the philosophy behind it, but is there a relationship between that form of music and, let's say, political activism?
History of the relationship between music and politics in Indonesia can be traced back to at least to the 1950s and 1960s, especially during the hype of rock and roll during the Sukarno time. Playing rock and roll music was considered subversive to Sukarno's regime at the time, because Sukarno considered the music as a product of neo-colonial cultural imperialism, whatever. And then it became political as well in the 1970s, when underground music was first introduced by this Surabaya-based rock band called AKA, which is actually an acronym of Apotek Kali Asin, because the vocalist's father owned this chemist store in Surabaya. Yeah,
okay, not apolitical.
No. Apotek, like chemist. So
okay.
they made this acronym AKA, and they were the first band that introduced their music genre as underground, and their music was popular at the same time with the popularity of the student movement, who were standing up against the Suharto's military regime. Suharto's military regime, or the New Order, was in an alliance with the student movement.
Oh, they were standing with them, not against them.
When they were working together to topple Sukarno in the mid-1960s. Yeah. But then the student activists realized in the early 1970s that Suharto is pretty much not in line with their aspiration, especially when the New Order's political and economic policies are very much going toward capitalistic and began to be more authoritarian. Student activists who questioned the New Order's policies, instead of being embraced, being listened to, they're actually being arrested and suppressed. And this created anger among not only young people, not only among student activists, but young people in general. And that created this riots that is known in Indonesian history called Peristiwa Malari, the Malari event. That's Malapetaka of the 15th January, Malapetaka 15 January.
So was there a relationship between music and politics then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, at the time?
Yeah.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm not there yet. So in the 1970s, the rise of the underground music and also the rise of the student that happens coincidentally, but there's no direct link.
Okay.
So there's no direct link between the music and the politics. It's different to the resurgence of underground music in the 1990s, which I considered as the second wave, where there is a clear direct link between the youth consumption of underground music, whether it's punk, hardcore, metal, to the rise of the student movement in the late 1990s. And it is something that many Indonesian politics scholars rarely mention, except the early generations like Jeremy Wallach, Emma Bolch, Michael Bowden, but then after that, there was not many people who discuss about that. The link between the music and the politics in the second wave is that the music genres, the songs brought by punk rock bands and other rock bands like Rage Against the Machine, Anthrax, Sepultura, what else? The Clash, Crash, the indie version or the punk, the DIY versions of the Clash, basically what people say, basically given an alternative worldview to the young people who were angry, frustrated towards the new order regime, and their music pretty much given them a way of thinking differently towards how society and politics or the state should be shaped. Some prefers reformasi or political reform. Some prefers revolution. I remember that debates around in the late 1990s. But basically, their consumptions of the music led them to their interest in reading radical books or radical literature, like the works of Pramoedya Anantatur, Sukarno, and Franz Magnesuseno, and also international well-known writers like Paulo Freire, Karl Marx, Engels, Bakunin, you name it. So from the music, and then they move towards reading radical literature. And from there, they want to apply their understanding of the world by participating in democratic social movements, mostly left-leaning. I was in different, a different side at the time, but many of my friends in the underground scene who became very active politically, they would join left-leaning student movement organizations such as PRD, the People's Democratic Party. And that eventually led them to be active in supporting factory workers' rights, supporting the political reformasi, and eventually they happened to be successful in toppling Suharto in 1998.
Partly thanks to underground music.
Partly, yes. I think underground music should be credited more than what other traditional political scientists ever done, when they discuss about Indonesian politics.
Okay. Well, that was over 20 years ago now.
Yes.
Yeah. So what about these days? To me, as an outsider looking in, it seems that the Indonesian, let's say underground, or even, let's even just say rock music scene went a bit quiet, politically speaking. We have that famous example of the grassroots rock band Slank penning the song titled The Kind-Hearted Police Officer.
Yang Baik Hati.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
And performing for the anniversary of the National Police Force. So it seems that they're aligning with the establishment. What's going on in Indonesian politics and music today?
To say that Indonesian music is no longer political or is no longer relevant in Indonesian politics is probably mistaken. Indonesian music continues to be political to some extent. The fact that Slang created a song special for the Indonesian National Police shows how music and politics are really still entangled with one another. Yeah. Political music doesn't mean to be, resistant the whole time. It could be accommodating, even preserving the ruling power or power structures, like what happened to Slang, for example. Even though Slang as a band, I don't consider Slang as an underground rock band, but they're really popular amongst working class youth. And in the 1990s, they used to be very well known for representing the feelings of the working class people. But since they became popular, it's probably not the case anymore. And the fact that now they created a song special for the Indonesian National Police, which representing for some people in Indonesia, especially among radical activists, is a representation of an institution that is repressive towards decent voices. Is an example of a commodification of music itself. So music has become a political community for the ruling power. And in this case, slang has shown the example. Another example is that it's not only slang, and this is the worst. Some underground bands even involved in such music production. There were some punk and metal bands performed in the Indonesian National Police anniversary
as well.
Yeah.
Oh.
So this is punk band, a punk band that I would never mention the name of it. The punk band performed in the National Police anniversary, and it was so weird. It was so strange and created debates within the punk scene itself. It created a fight as well. It's really funny, but also really it gives us a critical questions of the directions of the punk movement itself. And like, where are you guys heading to here? Are you really supporting the anti-establishment political stance, or are you supporting it? What made that band controversial was that because it happened during the time when the Indonesian police forces were so repressive toward demonstrators. And these demonstrators were pretty much demanding for a legit demands, for better works rights, and what else? And also those who were critical of the government policies were also arrested. So it just really, odd, the idea of a punk band and also performing in the repressive institution. And there were also a case of a punk band known as an anarcho-punk band performing for an oligarch-supported political party. Not supported, oligarch-owned political party. And this is also another level of, awkwardness.
Is that what you call a sellout?
Yes, that's the right term to describe this phenomenon, sellout. So some of the bands will actually sell out, and slang is only one example, but there are worse examples even within the underground music scene, like the anonymous bands that I should not mention. That the level of the sellout can be explained first by the penetrations of neoliberal agenda in the underground music scene, where many underground scene participants become involved in capitalist ventures, selling band merchandise, not only to support their own fellow comrades in the band, in the underground scene, but for profit, selling the t-shirts for profit, selling the music for profit and all that. In the 1990s, this independent or DIY collective, they sell stuff in order to support their movement. But after the New Order collapse, things have changed. Neoliberal agenda become more popular, and there's an idea to become a successful use that you have to be, selling stuff in a more expansive way, expanding your business, not only in one city, but different cities, not only in one country, but then in other countries. Yeah.
We have neoliberal punks these days.
Yes, pretty much. But it doesn't mean that all punks are like that. There are some punk communities and individuals who maintain their punk principles of self-reliance, anti-capitalism and all that. Sometimes they were involved in an affair having a show sponsored by a corporate, for example. But anyway,
they cheated on their roots, their beliefs.
Yes, I was one of them. Because we didn't consider performing in the shows that were sponsored by corporations as a bad thing. Because at the time, the narrative is that if you're being sponsored by a corporation, that means that's the end of you. You will have less freedom. And we thought, we still have our own freedom. We're just using their resources to expand our music, basically, to get more people to know our music, And the idea was that we're using it as a strategy to navigate to navigate the neoliberal agenda into our own cause.
Okay.
It's called Fight from Within. But then after years of being involved in that kind of process, I came to a conclusion that it's a bullshit. Because the more we rely on corporate resources, the more we really dependent on them. We started to lose our freedom. There are some cases where punk musicians are not allowed to perform in other events sponsored by different corporations. I have a friend who is a famous guitarist in Indonesia, and he was sponsored by this tobacco company. And he was told not to perform in another competitor's event. If he did that, then he will be kicked out from the contract. So, and then also my personal experience is that I attend to this event sponsored by, it's supposed to be indie event, but again, sponsored by the tobacco company. In order to get into there, the security guard will search you, and not only they will take dangerous stuff like knives or belts, that would cause riots in the event, but they will take your cigarettes, which have different brands to the brands that was sponsoring the music event. And I was like, this is so bad, the level of freedom is basically shrinking every year. Yeah, so, yeah.
Wow. What about now? There are still some young people involved in the underground scene in Indonesia. As a veteran, what kind of advice do you have for these people?
Well, I'm not saying that this is the only picture of underground music scene in Indonesia, that it has become a commodity or domesticated by those in power economically and politically. I would say that before I jump into giving an advice, I would say that there are some consistent participants in the underground scene that used music as a voice for protest, and is still relevant now. It never ends, actually. That, for example, in Bandung, there's this underground participants, both musicians and fans, who were involved in solidarity movement to support those people whose properties and houses were forcibly evicted by the corporate and state alliances, state forces. So they wanted to build these apartments and hotels, luxurious apartments and hotels in the center of Bandung city, but at the expense of of a village that was centered right around there. So my friends in the scenes pretty much helping them out to maintain their rights to stay there. They fought in different other solidarity movements, such as the Dago Melawan movement, Taman Sari Melawan, and many others. Some others chose to be active in the rural areas, defending the rights of the farmers, whose rights were being also threatened by corporations. And also, what happened recently is what happened to the post-punk band Sukatani, whose song called Bayar Bayar Bayar, or means pay pay pay, was suppressed, and the members were arrested by the police because the music, their song Bayar Bayar Bayar, is pretty much showing the honesty of the reality of the corrupt policemen. That in order to go to a venue, then you have to pay. In order to organize music event, you have to pay to the policemen. And there will be like different policemen come to the show and asking for bribe money the whole time. In order to get an easy access to get your KTP or a driver's license, you have to pay and all that. So these guys, Sukatani, being honest with the song, but then they got arrested. One of the members was forcibly, basically she was kicked out by her employer, and that was apparently being the head of the school was forced by the Indonesian police, because they don't want these band members to be what do you call it, embraced by the school, by the environment. And now the police has prohibited the circulations of their song buyer. So you couldn't find it on the digital platforms because of that.
So we're seeing the threat of neoliberalism and then authoritarian tactics.
Yeah.
But punk is not dead.
No, it's not dead at all. It's still there. Well, it sounds cliche to say that.
Doesn't sound easy.
Yeah, between life and death. In between. But it's still there. I mean, in a repressive regime, in a country where oppression and repression is a norm to maintain the ruling power, popular culture, including music, specifically music in the case of Indonesia, is always used as the alternative venue for the people who are affected by this oppression and repression to voice their criticisms. And as happened in the 1990s, and it continued to be happening now still, like what happened to Sukatani.
How do you think these young musicians can survive?
In Indonesian, I would say, teruslah kritis dan teruslah berkarya, maju terus, pantang mundur. Keep being critical and keep being creative and productive. Don't be afraid. Keep moving forward. Never back down.
Thank you, Indra. Wow, what a journey. So, yeah, we've learned about you personally as well as the Indonesian music scene. If anyone out there is interested in learning more about the Indonesian social political context, the Indonesian language, we're here at UNE. Just contact us and we're ready to share. So thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to sharing another interesting story with you in the next edition of Indonesia Unedited.